Commander Solara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Blade of Dawn, as stars stretched endlessly outside the wide viewing glass. Around her, officers moved with sharp precision, speaking in clipped tones, checking scanners, and relaying reports. Every movement, every word carried the weight of her presence. For she was not just any leader, she was the untouchable. Her title was not given lightly. In the Veyari Empire, power was displayed in many ways, through rank, through victories, through the control of one's body and mind. But Solara had gone beyond all of that. She had sworn an oath long ago that no man could touch her, not in greeting, not in comfort, not even in battle. For her, touch was weakness, and weakness had no place in the Empire. Whispers of her vow traveled across fleets and worlds. Some admired her for it, believing she embodied strength itself. Others feared her, calling her a figure carved of stone. Whatever people thought, none dared challenge her rule. She had led dozens of successful campaigns, crushed rebels, and expanded the Empire's influence. Solara had never failed. Tonight, however, something was different. "Commander," her second officer reported, his voice steady but tight. "The enemy fleet continues pursuit. They're vessels. They are not like any we have seen." Solara's golden eyes narrowed. "Explain." The officer hesitated before answering. "Their technology is strange. Shields we cannot penetrate. Weapons that cut through our armor as if it were paper. We are losing ships one after another." The bridge grew colder, though no temperature changed. Officers worked faster, trying to hide their fear. Solara walked slowly to the central display, her long cloak brushing the floor. On the holomap, glowing symbols showed her fleet being torn apart. She clenched her jaw. The Veyari Empire was powerful, feared across galaxies. Yet here they were, retreating from an enemy no one understood. Solara's voice was calm but sharp as steel. "Order the outer wings to break off. Draw their fire while the core ships prepare for hyperslip." Her crew obeyed without hesitation. None questioned her commands, for none dared. But in her chest, Solara felt something unfamiliar, something she despised. A shadow of doubt. The strange enemy fleet closed in. They had no emblem, no familiar design. Whoever they were, they fought with brutal precision. Solara's ship shuddered as enemy fire struck, alarms flaring. "Shields down to 40%. An officer cried. Solara did not flinch. She stood tall, refusing to let fear show. To falter in front of her crew would be worse than defeat. Yet deep inside, she knew the truth. They were losing. "Prepare emergency retreat," she ordered. "All remaining ships scatter on my signal. Survival is priority." Her words carried across the fleet. For the first time in years, Solara gave the order to retreat. The enemy, however, had no intention of letting them go. A sudden blast rocked the flagship, throwing officers from their stations. Sparks showered down, smoke filling the air. Solara grabbed the console to steady herself. "Commander, engine damage, hyperslip drive offline." Solara's heart hardened. Her ship, the Blade of Dawn, was dead in space. Around her, her remaining fleet was torn apart one by one, fire consuming them. "Commander," her officer whispered, his voice breaking. "What do we do?" For the first time, Solara had no answer. Hours later, when the battle was over, silence filled the bridge. The once proud flagship now floated powerless, its lights dim, hull scorched. Most of her fleet was gone. The enemy had disappeared as mysteriously as they had arrived, leaving only wreckage behind. Solara sat in the command chair, her face expressionless. Inside, however, her pride burned with humiliation. She had never been defeated, and yet here she was, surrounded by ruins. Then came the final blow. "Commander," a voice crackled over the comms, but it was not Veyari. It was smooth, deep, and foreign. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the human vessel Resolute. We are approaching to assist. Do not resist, human," Solara frowned. The Veyari considered humans a primitive race, new to the stars, weak, disorganized. Why would humans be here? And why would they speak of assisting her? Before she could respond, her officers looked at her nervously. Some whispered of surrender. Others looked ready to fight to the last. Solara silenced them with a single glance. "Put them on screen," she ordered. The viewing glass flickered, revealing the face of Captain Elias Ward. A man. A human man. He had dark eyes, steady and calm, and a voice that carried quiet authority. He did not smile, nor did he sneer. He looked at her as if she were simply another commander. Not a legend, not the untouchable. "Commander Solara," he said, pronouncing her name perfectly. "Your ship is crippled. Your crew is in danger. We can tow you to safety, or you can sit here until your life support fails. The choice is yours." Solara's jaw tightened. She expected mockery, arrogance, threats. Instead, she heard only calm reason. It unsettled her. "You dare address me so casually," she said coldly. "I am Commander Solara of the Veyari Empire. I do not need your help." Elias did not flinch. "You may not want it, but your crew does. Think of them." The bridge went silent. Solara felt the weight of her officer's stares. Pride told her to refuse, but a true commander placed survival first. "Very well," she said finally, her voice like ice. "Do what you must." The connection ended. Her crew released silent breaths of relief. Solara, however, sat frozen in her chair. She had just accepted aid from a man, a human man. Her vow, her pride, her very identity trembled at the edge of something she could not name. The human ship Resolute drew closer, its design unfamiliar to Solara's eyes. It was not elegant like Veyari vessels, but solid, sturdy, and efficient. Beams of light reached out, locking onto her crippled ship. Slowly, carefully, the human vessel began to tow them. Solara remained standing, her back straight, her expression unreadable. But inside her thoughts raced. Humans were not supposed to be strong. Humans were not supposed to be here. And, above all, no man was supposed to touch her life in any way. Yet tonight a human man had saved her. And this was only the beginning. The Resolute moved steadily through space, towing Solara's wounded flagship. The contrast between the two ships was clear. The Veyari vessel had once been a proud spear of silver and gold, carved with symbols of the Empire's power. Now it floated scarred, engines ruined, hull darkened by smoke. The human vessel, by comparison, was plain, gray metal, square edges, and no decoration. Yet it was this plain human ship that carried them to safety. Solara stood on her bridge, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. Her crew worked quietly, repairing what systems they could, but every officer avoided her eyes. They could feel her fury, though her face revealed nothing. To lose against an unknown enemy was one humiliation. To be rescued by humans was another. And worse, it was not just rescue, it was dependence. Without the Resolute, her people would already be drifting toward death. Her thoughts were interrupted by the voice of her second officer. "Commander," he said cautiously, "the human captain requests communication." Solara's golden eyes flicked toward him. For a moment, silence stretched, heavy and sharp. Finally, she spoke. "Put him through." The screen lit up again, showing Captain Elias Ward. He sat in his command chair, surrounded by his officers. Unlike Veyari bridges where silence and fear kept order, the human crew moved with relaxed efficiency. Some smiled as they spoke to each other. Some even laughed quietly as they worked. To Solara it seemed strange, yet their discipline was not weak. Elias looked directly at her, his expression calm. "Commander Solara, our scanners show your life support is stable, but your engines remain critical. My crew can send a team to assist with repairs once we reach safe orbit." Solara's lips pressed into a thin line. "We do not need human mechanics on my ship." Elias tilted his head slightly, his voice steady. "That may be true, but without functioning engines you cannot travel far. Your enemy will not give you time to wait. I suggest you consider survival above pride." Her crew froze. No one had ever spoken to Solara this way. Not her enemies, not even her superiors in the Empire. His words were not insults, but they were firm, direct, and without fear. Solara's jaw tightened. She wanted to order him away, to show him that no man could speak so boldly to her. Yet something inside her hesitated. His calmness was not arrogance, it was certainty. Finally she answered, "Very well. You may send your team when we are secure." Elias gave a short nod. "Understood. We will not cross your boundaries without permission." The screen flickered off. Solara stood still, her thoughts turning sharply. "Without permission." He spoke as if her rules meant something to him. But she had not told him of her vow. He could not know her title, the Untouchable. Yet he acted with a strange respect, one she had not expected. Hours later, both ships entered orbit around a quiet, uninhabited moon. The Resolute released Solara's flagship, and the human repair shuttles approached. Solara ordered her crew to stand ready. She walked to the docking bay, her cloak flowing behind her. When the hatch opened, a group of humans stepped through in simple uniforms, carrying tools and equipment. They looked around with professional focus, not awe. At their front was Captain Elias Ward, He was taller than she expected, his presence strong but not overwhelming. His eyes scanned the damaged bay, then moved to Solara. He bowed his head slightly, a human gesture of respect, and spoke with calm authority. "Commander Solara, with your permission, my engineers will begin repairs here and on your main engines." Her crew stiffened at his tone. To them, no one asked permission of Solara. No one addressed her as if she were simply another commander. But Elias did. Solara studied him carefully. His voice was not laced with fear, not with arrogance. It was steady, as if he stood on equal ground with her. She was not used to this. In the Empire, people either trembled before her or fought to destroy her. This human did neither. "You may proceed," she said finally. Elias gave a short order to his team. The humans moved quickly, setting up equipment, climbing into damaged panels, and welding new supports. They worked together smoothly, their voices light but efficient. Some joked with each other while tightening bolts, others offered quick encouragement. Solara's eyes narrowed. In her empire, discipline was born of fear. Officers obeyed because they were terrified of punishment. But here these humans obeyed out of something else. It was not fear. It was trust. She turned to Elias. "Your crew is, unusual. They lack restraint." Elias looked at her, calm as ever. "They don't need restraint. They respect me, and I respect them. That is enough." Solara's brow furrowed. "Respect does not win wars. Fear does." Elias shook his head slightly. "Fear breaks. Respect holds." The words struck her in a way she did not like. She turned away, unwilling to admit that his answer unsettled her. Over the next hours, Solara walked the corridors of her ship, watching the humans work. They moved quickly, repairing engines, restoring power, sealing damaged walls. They spoke freely without the cold silence her own crew maintained. Yet they accomplished more in hours than her engineers had managed in days. She overheard one of her officers whisper to another, They are efficient." Solara silenced them with a glare, but deep inside she agreed. Later, she returned to the docking bay, where Elias checked progress with his team. He looked up as she entered. "Repairs will be finished soon," he reported. "Your engines should hold until you return to a safe port." Solara studied him carefully. He did not look at her with awe. He did not flinch under her gaze. He simply spoke as if she were his equal. "You do not fear me," she said suddenly. Elias's dark eyes met hers steadily. "Should I?" The question cut sharper than a blade. No one had ever asked her that. People feared her name, her vow, her power. Yet this human looked at her and saw, "What? You should," she answered coldly. Elias gave a faint smile, not mocking, not arrogant, simply calm. "Fear doesn't build trust, Commander, and I'd rather trust you." Solara's breath caught for a moment. She quickly turned away, hiding her reaction. When the repairs were complete, Elias gathered his team. He bowed his head again to Solara. "Your ship is ready. My part here is finished." Solara watched him closely. He expected nothing from her, no thanks, no recognition. He simply did his duty and prepared to leave. That was strange to her. In her empire, every act of help came with hidden chains. But this man offered aid freely, then stepped back without demand. As the humans returned to their shuttle, Solara's crew whispered among themselves. Some muttered about human insolence, others about their surprising skill. Solara silenced them all. She stood alone in the docking bay, her mind unsettled. Elias Ward had not asked her permission to treat her as equal. He simply did it. He had not shown fear, nor had he sought dominance. And somehow that disturbed her more than any threat ever could. For the first time in her life, Commander Solara wondered if her vow, the rule that no man could ever touch her life, was not strength, but something else. And though she did not admit it aloud, she found herself curious. Curious about this human captain who treated her as no one ever had. The stars drifted outside the viewing glass as Commander Solara's flagship traveled beside the human vessel Resolute. The engines of her ship, once broken and silent, now pulsed with steady light. Repairs had been successful. Yet even with her ship restored, Solara felt something was not fixed within herself. Her crew moved quietly, avoiding her gaze more than usual. They had seen too much. They had seen her defeated in battle. They had seen her accept aid from humans. Worst of all, they had seen Captain Elias Ward speak to her without fear. The untouchable had always been beyond reach, a figure of iron. Now cracks were forming. Solara refused to let those cracks widen. She stood on her bridge, arms crossed, watching the human ship on her displays. Her second officer stepped forward. "Commander," he said carefully, "our scanners show the enemy fleet has begun moving again. They are searching for survivors. If we remain here, they will find us." Solara's jaw tightened. "We will not run again." The officer hesitated. "But our forces are weakened." "We cannot," Solara cut him off with a sharp glare. "We will not run again." Her voice carried the weight of command. The officer lowered his eyes and nodded. Yet Solara herself knew the truth. They could not face that strange enemy alone. Even if her engines were restored, her fleet was shattered. That was when the human voice returned. The comms lit up and Captain Elias Ward appeared on screen. "Commander Solara, we've picked up the enemy's signal. They're regrouping and preparing to strike again. If we face them separately, neither of us will survive. But together we may stand a chance." Solara's eyes narrowed. "You assume I will ally with humans." Elias's expression remained calm. "I assume you value victory. Alone we die. Together we live." The silence on the bridge grew heavy. Solara's officers looked at her, waiting. Pride roared within her, demanding she refuse. But logic pressed back, cold and clear. He was right. Still, she could not let this man believe she was weak. She straightened her shoulders and said, "Very well, Captain. But do not mistake this alliance for friendship. The Veari Empire does not lower itself to human ways." Elias gave a short nod. "Understood. Then let us plan." Hours later, the two commanders met face to face on the Resolute. The human ship was smaller, its corridors narrow, its walls plain. Solara walked with her head high, her cloak trailing behind her. Her guards followed close, though she doubted they were needed. The humans did not glare or whisper as her own officers did. They simply worked, focused on their duties. When she entered the strategy room, Elias was waiting. He stood at the holo table, studying projections of enemy movements. His posture was calm, steady, as though nothing in the galaxy could shake him. "Commander Solara," he greeted. "Thank you for coming." Solara moved closer, her eyes on the display. "Speak." Elias tapped the controls, showing the enemy fleet's formation. "They strike with precision. Their weapons are designed to overwhelm shields. If we split their formation, we may survive long enough to counterattack, but we'll need coordination between our crews." Solara folded her arms. "My crew will obey me without question. Can you say the same of yours?" Elias looked at her directly. "Yes, but not out of fear. Out of loyalty." The word made her lips tighten. She leaned closer, her voice sharp. "Loyalty is fragile. Fear is eternal." Elias did not flinch. "Fear collapses the moment strength fails. Loyalty endures even in defeat." The two commanders stared at each other across the table, the air between them thick with tension. Neither yielded. It was a battle of wills, fought not with weapons, but with words and presence. Finally, Elias turned back to the display. "We don't have time for philosophy. The enemy is moving. Decide quickly." Solara's pride urged her to argue further. Yet her mind knew he was right. They needed action, not debate. She gave a short nod. "Then we fight together." When the battle began, Solara stood once more on her bridge. Her crew worked quickly, carrying out orders as the human voice echoed through the comms. Elias's commands flowed with steady confidence, guiding his people with trust. The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace, their strange ships cutting through the void like blades of shadow. At once, fire lit the stars. Explosions rocked the battlefield. Solara barked her commands, her voice sharp and commanding. "Shields to maximum. Focus fire on their flank." Her officers obeyed, fear driving their speed. The Veari ship struck hard, but the enemy shields held strong. Across the comms, Elias's voice came clear. "Hold formation. Push on their center. We'll break them if we stay together." Solara's eyes narrowed. He gave commands as though she were part of his crew. Yet when she considered snapping back, something stopped her. His strategy was working. Minutes stretched into hours. The battle raged, the enemy pressing harder. The Veari flagship shook with each hit. Solara stood unflinching, but her heart pounded. Her crew faltered. Fear was spreading. Then unexpectedly, Elias's voice cut across the channel, directed at her ship. "Veari crew, hold strong. Your commander has led you through worse. Trust her. Stay with us and we win together." Solara froze. No human had ever spoken directly to her people. Her officers looked up in shock. Yet instead of collapsing, they straightened. Their fear eased, replaced by something new. They obeyed, not out of fear of punishment, but out of belief. Solara's chest tightened, though she hid it. That human had done in seconds what she had built with years of iron discipline. He had given them confidence with nothing but words. Together, the two fleets pressed harder, striking at weak points. Slowly, the enemy formation broke. Ships exploded one by one until the survivors fled into the void. The battle was won. Silence filled the Veyari bridge. Smoke drifted through the air, but cheers rose from the crew. They looked at Solara with something strange in their eyes. Not just fear, but pride. Solara sat in her chair, her hands gripping the armrests. Victory should have filled her with triumph. Instead, her thoughts turned to the human captain. His voice, his certainty, his strange way of leading. He did not ask her permission to act. He did not wait for her approval. He simply treated her as equal, and her crew had followed him. Later, when she met Elias again in the strategy room, the tension between them was sharper than ever. "You spoke to my crew without my order," she said coldly. Elias met her gaze calmly, and they listened. That saved lives, her eyes burned. "You dared to take authority on my ship." He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. "I didn't take authority. I gave them faith. And they gave it back. That's the difference." For a long moment they stared at each other, the challenge clear. Neither would bow. Neither would yield. But deep inside, Solara knew something had shifted. Elias Ward had not only touched her life, he had touched her crew, her command, her very empire. And he had done it without asking. It unsettled her more than defeat ever could. The battle was over, but the war inside Solara had only begun. Her flagship floated in orbit near the quiet moon, its hull scorched but steady. Repairs continued day and night, carried out by both Veyari engineers and human specialists. Though her ship still stood, Solara's mind did not rest. For days she kept replaying the moment Elias Ward had spoken to her crew. His words had steadied them, given them strength in the middle of chaos. She should have been furious, furious that a human captain had dared to take her place, furious that her crew had listened. But when she searched her heart, she found something else. Relief. That disturbed her more than anything. Solara had built her life on the vow that no man could ever touch her. Not her hand, not her mind, not her authority. She had been untouchable. But Elias had not asked permission. He had stepped into her command without hesitation, and her people had followed. Now when she walked the corridors, her crew's eyes lingered on her with new expression. Not fear alone, but trust. It unsettled her. The real test came sooner than expected. The mysterious enemy returned, launching a sudden strike on the moon where both fleets rested. Explosions lit the stars as ships scrambled to defend themselves. Solara raced to the bridge, her cloak sweeping behind her. "Shields up," she commanded. "All batteries fire on the closest ships." Her crew obeyed swiftly, fear and determination mixing in their movements. The humans responded as well, the Resolute firing its heavy cannons to break enemy formations. But the assault was stronger than before. Enemy ships swarmed like a storm, forcing Solara's flagship into a desperate retreat. The hull groaned, alarms screamed, and flames spread through corridors. "Commander," an officer shouted, "fire in Sector 12. Bulkheads are collapsing." Solara's eyes narrowed. Sector 12 was near the reactor. If the fire reached it, the entire ship would be lost. "Seal it off," she ordered. "Trapped crew inside," another officer replied. Solara hesitated only a moment before storming toward the corridor herself. She would not abandon her people. The air grew hotter as she reached Sector 12. Flames danced along the walls, smoke filling the passage. Solara's lungs burned, but she pressed forward. She could see 3 officers pinned behind debris, their faces desperate. "Commander!" they cried. Solara grabbed a fallen beam, straining to lift it. Her muscles trembled, but the metal would not move. She was strong, but not strong enough alone. Suddenly, another pair of hands gripped the beam beside hers. She turned sharply. Elias Ward stood next to her, soot on his face, his eyes steady. "Together," he said simply. Before she could protest, before she could remind him of her vow, the beam lifted. His strength joined hers, and the wreckage shifted aside. The trapped officers crawled free, coughing but alive. Then the ceiling above groaned. Solara looked up just as a burning section collapsed. She tried to leap back, but the floor gave way beneath her. For a heartbeat, she felt herself falling into fire. And then, a hand seized hers, firm, unshaking. pulling her up with force that defied gravity. Elias Ward dragged her to safety, shielding her from the falling debris with his own body. The flames roared around them, but his grip did not falter until they reached clear ground. Solara froze. For the first time in her life, a man had touched her. Not by accident, not in passing, but fully. His hand holding hers, his arm steadying her. She expected fury to rise, shame to burn, rage to consume her. Instead, she felt something she had never known. Trust. His touch had not been about ownership. It had not been about dominance. It had been about saving her life. Elias released her hand as soon as they were safe. He did not comment, did not gloat. He simply turned to check on the rescued crew. Solara stood frozen, her heart racing. The vow she had carried for years, the shield of her pride, lay shattered in the ashes of that corridor. After the fire was contained, Solara returned to her quarters. Alone, she paced like a restless storm. Her hand still remembered the strength of his grip. Her mind still replayed the moment he pulled her from death. She whispered to herself, "No man can touch me." But the words felt hollow now, for Elias Ward had touched her. And instead of weakness, she had felt strength. Instead of shame, she had felt safety. Her vow was broken, and with it, the very foundation of who she thought she was. Solara sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the polished metal wall. For the first time, she no longer knew who Commander Solara, the Untouchable, truly was. The days after the fire passed in quiet tension. Both fleets regrouped, repairing what damage they could. The enemy had retreated once more, but Solara knew they would return. On the bridge, her crew moved with unusual energy. They looked to her not only with fear, but with trust born of survival. Something had changed within them, just as something had changed within her. But Solara avoided Elias. She could not face him. Not yet. Every time she saw his face, she remembered the feel of his hand pulling her from death. She remembered the vow that had shattered in that moment. Her pride told her to stay distant. Her heart told her otherwise. The final confrontation came sooner than either side expected. Scouts reported the enemy fleet gathering once more, larger than before, preparing for a decisive strike. Both Veyari and humans knew this battle would decide everything. Victory meant survival. Defeat meant extinction. Solara stood in the strategy room beside Elias, their fleet's fates bound together. The holomap glowed between them. "They will come with all they have," Solara said, her voice steady. "If we fall apart, we are finished." Elias nodded. "Then we hold together. Humans and Veyari, side by side." Their eyes met across the table. For once there was no challenge, no battle of wills, only unity. When the battle began, the stars lit with fire once more. Enemy ships poured forward like a tide of shadow. Solara's voice rang across her bridge. "Hold the line. Do not falter." Her crew obeyed with fierce determination, not only because they feared her, but because they believed in her. And they believed in themselves. Across the comms, Elias's voice joined hers. "Stay together. Strike with precision. We win this as one." The two voices wove through the chaos, guiding fleets that should have been rivals but now fought as allies. The battle was brutal, ships shattering, explosions tearing across the void. Solara's flagship took heavy damage, but still she stood tall. Her crew fought harder than ever, not breaking under fear, but rising with courage. At the critical moment when the enemy flagship surged forward, Elias ordered his ship into its path. Solara's eyes widened as she realized his plan. He was going to sacrifice the Resolute to open a path for her strike. "No," she shouted across the comms. "Do not throw your life away." Elias's calm voice answered. "Sometimes strength means taking the hit for others. Finish this, Solara." Her heart clenched. For the first time, she spoke not as a commander, but as a woman. "Elias, I will not let you fall." Together, their fleets struck. The Resolute endured the enemy's fire long enough for Solara's flagship to launch a final, devastating barrage. The enemy flagship exploded, its fleet scattering in chaos. The battle was won. When silence returned to the stars, Solara sat in her chair, her chest rising with heavy breaths. Victory belonged to them, but more than that, change belonged to her. Later, when she met Elias face to face once more, she did not wear her cloak of pride. She stood simply as Solara, no longer the Untouchable. She extended her hand to him. For a moment he hesitated, surprised. Then he took it, his grip firm but gentle. This time the touch was not forced by fire or battle. This time it was her choice. Solara spoke softly, words no one in her empire would believe if they heard them. No man was ever meant to touch me. But you did not ask permission, and you showed me I was wrong to fear it. Elias's eyes met hers, calm as always. Then perhaps you were never untouchable. Perhaps you were only waiting for someone you could trust? Solara's heart steadied. For the first time in her life she felt free, not bound by fear, not bound by pride, but free to choose. She was no longer the untouchable commander. She was Solara. And she was stronger than ever.